In the bustling village of Umudike, where the sun paints the earth with its bright colors and the birds sang melodies that carried the whispers of old tales, there an orphan boy lived named Obinna. His mother, Adaeze, had passed when he was still a baby, leaving him in the care of his father's wife, a wicked woman named Nneka. Nneka was a cruel and bitter woman who had no love for the boy. She saw Obinna as a burden, a constant reminder of her husband's infidelity. She blamed him for everything that went wrong in her life. Every day, she would give him the most difficult chores to do, denying him food and water, while her own children, Ejike and Amaka, played under the shade of the great Iroko tree in the compound. Obinna, Nneka would scream, her voice shrill like the cry of a hungry eagle. Why haven't you finished fetching water from the stream? Are you waiting for the moon to come out? Useless child. Obinna, thin and frail, would drag his weary feet to the stream, his back bent under the weight of the water pot. He often wondered why he was treated so harshly. What wrong had he done? Why did the gods forsake him? Little did he know that his life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. One day, as he was cleaning the family compound, he overheard Nneka speaking to her friend, Mama Naji. This boy is a curse, she spat out. Ever since my husband died, nothing has gone right. I wish he would disappear like a mist in the morning sun. Mama Naji, a woman known for her sharp tongue and even sharper eyes, leaned closer and whispered, Be careful, Nneka. The spirits are always listening. You never know when they might answer. Nneka scoffed, dismissing the warning with a wave of her hand. Let them hear. Maybe they will do me a favor and take him away. That night, as Obinna lay on his mat, he prayed to the gods. Oh, great spirit of our ancestors, if I have done anything wrong, forgive me, please. But if not, may you show me a sign. May you help me find out who I truly am. The next morning, the village was in uproar. The village king Ezedike had passed in his sleep. He had been a great king, loved by his people. But he had no known heir. The villagers and the elders were in disarray. Without an heir, who will take over the throne? Please subscribe to this channel, turn on your notification bell, like and comment. Thank you. Who will guide the village? As tradition demanded, the village oracle, a mysterious old woman named Agbala, was consulted. She was known for her ability to commune with the spirits, her eyes clouded with visions of past and the future. She listened intently as the elders voiced their concerns, her face expressionless. After what seemed like an eternity, Agbala spoke. The king's heir exists, but he is hidden from your eyes. You must find him, for he alone can bring peace to Umudike. The gods have decreed it. The village was abuzz with excitement and confusion. Who could this heir be? How could he have been hidden for so long? The elders decided to search every home, leaving no stone unturned. They believed that the gods will guide them to the rightful heir. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months, but no heir was found. Just as the village was beginning to lose hope, a strange thing happened. Obinna, the orphan boy, while fetching water from the stream, met an old man lying by the river. The man was weak and seemed to be on the verge of death. Without hesitation, Obinna carried the old man on his back and brought him to the village. When the old man opened his eyes, he looked straight at Obinna and smiled, a knowing glint in his eyes. You are the one, he whispered. You are the one the spirit spoke of. Obinna was confused. I don't understand, Nai. What do you mean? But the old man only smiled and closed his eyes, drifting off into a deep sleep. News of the incident quickly spread through the village, and soon the elders arrived at Nneka's compound. They demanded to see Obinna, insisting that he might be the one the oracle had spoken about. Nneka, furious and terrified, tried to hide the boy, But the villagers would not relent. They dragged Obinna before the elders and the oracle. Agbala, her eyes closed, reached out and touched Obinna's forehead. The moment her fingers made contact, her eyes popped out in surprise and shock. "This boy," she began, her voice trembling. "This boy is the son of Ezedike, the rightful heir to the throne." The crowd erupted in astonishment. How could this be? How could the king's son be living as an orphan, suffering under the cruel hand of Nneka? The story spilled out like water from a broken pot. Ezedike had once had an affair with a beautiful maiden in his palace named Adaeze, who gave birth to a son. Fearing the wrath of his wife and the scandal it will bring, the king had kept the affair a secret. He had provided for Adaeze in secret, but after her untimely death, the child was left at the mercy of Nneka, who had no idea of his true parentage. As the truth sank in, Nneka fell to her knees, her face pale with fear. "Please forgive me," she begged, her voice barely a whisper. "I did not know, I swear I did not know." But Obinna, now standing tall and proud, looked down at the woman who had made his life a living hell. "The gods have spoken," he said, his voice steady and calm, "and they do not lie." The villagers cheered, hailing Obinna as their new king. But as they celebrated, Obinna's eyes remained fixed on Nneka. He knew he could not let her cruelty go unpunished. He had endured too much pain, too much suffering. It was time for the orphan boy to take his revenge. Obinna stood before the gathered crowd, his heart a storm of emotions. The villagers chanted his name, their voices a rising tide of hope and jubilation. Yet, beneath the surface of his joyous revelation, a darker feeling brewed within Obinna, a feeling that has simmered quietly for years, buried under layers of suffering and despair. Now, that feeling rose like a beast in its den. Obinna took a deep breath and addressed the crowd, his voice steady and authoritative. "I thank you all for your trust in me. I will do everything in my power to be a fair and just leader, like my father Ezedike. But there's something that must be addressed, something that weighs heavily on my heart." The villagers fell silent, their eyes shifting from Obinna to Nneka, who trembled before him. Her eyes, once filled with cruelty and malice, were now wide with fear. She knew her fate lay in the hands of the boy she had tormented for so many years. "The woman before you," Obinna continued, "has wronged me deeply. She treated me not as a human, but as an animal. She starved me, she beat me, she tried to break my spirit. She is the embodiment of wickedness. But today, I stand here not as an orphan, but as your king. And as your king, I must decide what justice truly means." The elders watched with keen interest, curious to see what kind of ruler this boy would become. They knew that a king's first decision could shape his rule forever. Agbala, the oracle, watched quietly, her face betraying no emotion, though she understood more than anyone the significance of the moment. Nneka's children, Ejike and Amaka, clung to each other, tears streaming down their faces. They had always been taught to despise Obinna, to see him as a rival for their mother's affection. Now they saw him as something else and someone else, someone with power over their lives. Obinna turned his gaze to them, called them to himself, and embraced them. His eyes in tears, he said softly, "Ejike, Amaka," he called. "Yes, my king," they said in unison, their voices trembling. "You are not to blame for your mother's actions," Obinna said gently. "You were children, doing as you were taught, but now you must decide what kind of people you will become. Will you follow in your mother's footsteps, or will you choose a different path?" Ejike, his eyes filled with guilt and fear. "We are sorry, King Obinna. We didn't know. We didn't know you were our brother." Amaka nodded, tears still streaming down her face. "Please forgive us," she pleaded. "We will do anything to make it right." Obinna nodded slowly. I'll forgive you, and I have forgiven you, but only if you show through your actions that you have truly changed. From this day forward, you will live as my siblings, and you will serve the people of Umudike with kindness and humility. Do you accept this?" Both of them nodded fervently, relief washing over their faces. "Yes, we accept, my king." Satisfied, Obinna turned back to Nneka. "As for you, Nneka," he said, his voice hardening, "your cruelty cannot be overlooked. You have brought pain and suffering, not only to me, but to this entire household. The people of Umudike deserve justice." Nneka sobbed. "Please, Obinna," she begged. "I'm sorry. I will do anything. Spare me, I beg you." Obinna looked down at her with a mixture of pity and contempt. He knew she was only sorry because she had been caught, because her power had been stripped away. But he also knew that true leadership meant more than seeking revenge. Turning to the elders, he asked, "What does the law of our land say about such matters?" The elders of the council, a wise man named Nkem, stepped forward. "Our laws are clear, my king. For such crimes, the punishment is exile. She must leave Umudike and never return. But as you are king, the decision ultimately is yours." The crowd murmured in agreement, but some looked unsure, wondering if exile was too lenient for the suffering she had caused Obinna. Obinna considered this, weighing his options. He could have Nneka thrown out of the village, forced to wander alone. But he wondered if there was a more fitting punishment. Finally, he raised his hand for silence. "Nneka," he said, "your exile is the just punishment for your deeds. You will leave this village and never return. But know this, if you are ever seen within the boundaries of Umudike again, you will be dealt with accordingly. Do you understand?" Nneka nodded frantically, her eyes wide with terror. "Yes, my king, yes, I understand." "Then go," Obinna commanded, "and may the gods have mercy on your soul." With that, the villagers parted, allowing Nneka to pass. She stumbled away, her once proud figure now broken and bent. As she disappeared into the distance, Obinna felt a strange sense of relief wash over him. He had faced his past, confronted his tormentor, and emerged stronger. But he knew that this was only the beginning. The elders approached, bowing low before him. "You have shown great wisdom today, my king," Nkem said. "You will be a just ruler, and Umudike will prosper under your reign." Obinna smiled, but his mind was already racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. He had spent his life in the shadows, but now, as the rightful heir to the throne, he had a chance to bring change to his people, to heal the wounds of the past, and build a future of peace and prosperity. Yet, deep within him, the flame of revenge still flickered. Nneka's punishment was just, but was it enough? Will the ghost of his past ever truly rest? As he looked out over his people, he knew that the journey was far from over. There were still many challenges to face, many wrongs to right, and he would need all the strength and wisdom he could muster to lead his people into a brighter tomorrow. But for now, Obinna held his head high, his heart filled with a newfound sense of purpose. The orphan boy had become a king, and his story had only just begun. As Obinna settled into his new role as king, he faced the challenges of leadership with a calm determination. He knew that ruling a village was more than wearing a crown. It was about making difficult decisions, ensuring justice and fostering unity among the people. The villagers had placed their trust in him, and he was determined not to let them down. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Under Obinna's leadership, the village began to thrive. He introduced new farming techniques that increased crop yields, improved the local markets, and ensured that every child had access to education. The people of Umudike began to see in Obinna the strength and wisdom of his father Ezedike. Yet, despite all his successes, there was still a sense of unease lingering in his heart. One evening, Obinna walked alone into the sacred grove, a place where the spirits of their ancestors were believed to reside. He needed guidance and sought the counsel of Agbala, the oracle. Agbala was in her shrine in meditation. As he approached, she opened her eyes, revealing a deep understanding that made Obinna's heart tremble. "You come seeking answers," she said, her voice as soft as the breeze. "But what is it that troubles you, young king?" Obinna's hesitation was for a moment, then he spoke. "I have done all that I can to lead my people with fairness and justice, but I still feel the weight of my past, the suffering I endured at the hands of Nneka. I exiled her, yet it feels as though something is unresolved, as if her darkness still lingers over my spirit. Have I made the right choice, Agbala? Did I show true justice?" Agbala studied him for a moment before speaking. "Justice is not always clear, Obinna. It is a path filled with shadows and light. You have shown mercy where others might have sought revenge. You chose to lead with your heart, not your power. But remember, healing from your past is not just about seeking justice for others. It is about finding peace within yourself." Obinna nodded, understanding her words, but still feeling the gnawing pain of his memories. "How do I find that peace?" he asked, almost in a whisper. Agbala smiled gently. "The path to peace lies within your heart. You must confront your pain, face your past, not with anger, but with understanding. Only then will the spirit of your ancestors grant you true peace." Obinna bowed his head in gratitude and turned to leave the grove. He knew what he needed to do. The next morning, Obinna gathered the village elders and announced his decision. "I will travel to the outskirts of Umudike, where Nneka was exiled. I must confront her one more time and seek closure for the wounds of my past." The elders were surprised, but they trusted their king's wisdom. "Go with the blessings of the ancestors, my king," Nkem said. "May you find the peace you seek." Obinna set out alone on his horse through the familiar paths in the dense forest and across the rivers. Please subscribe to this channel, turn on your notification bell, like and comment. Thank you. He had once traversed as a child. The journey was long, but after several days, he got to the small hut where Nneka now lived, on the edge of the village boundary. As he approached, he saw Nneka sitting outside, her once vibrant figure now frail and worn. She looked up, her eyes widening in shock at the sight of Obinna. "What are you doing here?" she croaked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Obinna stood before her, his expression calm but resolute. "I came to speak with you, Nneka," he said. "I need to understand why you treated me the way you did. Was it because of my mother? Or was it something more?" Nneka lowered her gaze, her hands trembling. "Your mother. She was a constant reminder of my husband's betrayal," she confessed. "I took out my pain and bitterness on you, a child who had done nothing wrong. I see now how wrong I was, but I cannot undo the past. I am truly sorry, Obinna." Obinna listened, his heart heavy with her words. He saw a broken woman consumed by her own bitterness and regrets. For so long, he had thought of her as a monster, but now he saw her humanity. She was flawed, like anyone else, and in her own twisted way, she had suffered too. "I forgive you, Nneka," Obinna said softly. "Not for you, but for me. I release the anger and hatred I have carried for so long. May you find peace in your exile." Nneka looked up, tears streaming down her face, surprised by his mercy. "Thank you," she whispered. "May the gods bless you, Obinna." Then a bright blinding light shone from the clouds, and they both smiled, for redemption and liberty had found them. Obinna turned and walked away, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. As he made his way back to the village, he felt a sense of lightness, a new beginning. He knew that the road ahead will not always be easy, but he was ready to face it, free from the chains of his past. When he returned to Umudike, the villagers welcomed him with open arms. sensing the change in their young king. From that day forward, Obinna ruled with wisdom and compassion, his heart open to his people and their needs. He led them through times of hardship and prosperity, always with a steady hand and a kind heart.